Hard to believe that we are actually 12 days into the shutdown at this point. Over the holidays, I guess if you weren't one of the hundreds of thousands of people who aren't getting paid or one of the people who was inconvenienced by this, maybe you weren't paying as much attention. Does the focus really come back today?
It does. The president has asked all the congressional leaders, Republicans and Democrats, to come to the White House. It looks like he's going to try to hold the meeting in the Situation Room to really amplify that he sees this as a security topic, not just about immigration or domestic politics or policies. I don't really see the leverage that he has right now. In some ways, like Trump put himself into this box by saying, listen, this will be the Trump shutdown. I feel so passionately about the wall. And he was calculating that Democrats worry about being seen as weak on national security if they're not in support of the wall. I think the Democratic Party, especially this incoming House class, is a lot different than the Democratic Party we've been thinking about over the last 10 years. I don't know that they have the views on immigration that Trump thinks they do. I think Nancy Pelosi is in a position of power in resisting the wall. And if she keeps resisting the wall, I do think it makes it hard to figure out how do you get out of this jam and how do you get back to both having the government operating in full and then Congress talking about something other than shutdowns.
Jim, people have no idea that Democrats had agreed to much higher, amounts. I mean, it's a rounding out of that $5 billion. People know that they were agreeing to, and you've seen all the videos of all these guys, Schumer, Obama, any of them, saying we need border security and they've all said it in the past. And let me just ask you, I know Pelosi's not speaker yet, obviously, but was there any optics with, the Fairmount on the Big Island? That is one of the nicest, it costs a lot. But that is one of the nicest places to be over the holidays versus being in the White House. You don't think that anyone looked at that and said, you're over there in, you talk a good game about worrying about, the have-nots, but that's an awful nice place where you are.
There's two pieces. One where she was vacationing, whether or not there was a backlash publicly, I don't know. I've not sensed that there is among Democrats in the House.
Among Democrats, but I don't know. It just seems
like
in
the public, certainly there could be. I mean, anytime politicians look like they're aloof and distant from what's happening in Washington, it probably doesn't help them. I think the more important thing that you hit on was in the past, most Democrats, including most Democrats in the Senate, have been on record in support for more money going for the construction of some barrier between here and Mexico. I think what's changed is back then, Democrats really worried about being seen as soft on national security, and they really felt like the wall had to be part of the equation. In some respects, it had to be like the starting point. Now, where Pelosi's operating with House Democrats, I don't think they care at all about it. I think that most of this Democratic caucus doesn't think you should do anything or do much at all along the wall.
Is that where the American public
is?
Is that where the American public is?
No, I think the American public is still divided. American public is still very concerned about the security threat of illegal immigration. So there's no doubt there's probably a disconnect between a lot of people in the House Democratic caucus and where most voters are. But what I'm talking about is where is this Democratic caucus in terms of how much leverage Pelosi has to keep the shutdown going. And I think that's a miscalculation I think that Trump made.
If the far left, Ocasio-Cortez, or people like that, if we had open borders and single payer, I'm just trying to figure out what that's going to cost. If you know what I mean? Everybody comes in, everybody gets free health. Is anyone adding up any of these things, or just the logic of these philosophical positions, Jim?
Well, they're not adding them up yet, but they will. And I think you have a lot of 2020 candidates that are about to hop in this race. And what I don't know yet, which I can't tell, is the majority of the Democratic Party basically where you just described it to be, meaning Medicare for all, much more laissez-faire immigration laws. And if that's where the Democratic Party is, does that put it in contrast to where the vast majority of the country is? And we don't know yet, but I do think that a lot of the candidates that are getting traction, a lot of the candidates that had some success in 2018 definitely were for some version of Medicare for all, and definitely had a different tone on immigration if they were talking about immigration at all. And I don't think the public has paid that much attention to what is the state of the Democratic Party. Once 2020 kicks in, people are going to look at, this is what Trump Republicanism looks like, and this is what fill in the blank Democratic theology looks like in 2020. And to me, what's fascinating is for the first time, I think in my lifetime, you have sort of the ideology of both parties very much up for grabs, very much being sort of recast and remolded before our eyes. And we don't actually know, especially when Trump leaves, we don't know exactly what the Republican Party stands for at its core, because it looks different today than it did 2 years ago. Same thing on the Democratic side. I don't think this is the party of Clinton for sure. I don't even know if it's the party of Obama. I think it might even be to the left of Obama when all is said and done.
Jim, whatever the party is going to look like,
Yeah.
Nancy Pelosi isn't necessarily a reflection of that. She's somebody who came in and was challenged for her leadership position, so she's going to have to play to the left to maintain things. And my guess would be that left caucus does not want her to settle with Trump on anything. So again, back to your original point, how do they get out of this shutdown? What does that look like?
It's very hard when you sit here to sketch out what a compromise looks like. You have Lindsey Graham, who I think is more close to Trump than not. They spend a lot of time talking. Sometimes he takes issue with him, but for the most part are on the same side. Lindsey Graham has been floating this idea of, could you get close to the $5 billion or get to the $5 billion figure that Trump wants to construct a wall in exchange for what Democrats want on DACA or dealing with the Dreamers on that side of immigration. Not sure if Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi would accept that, but that would be a possible way out. It's possible this thing just keeps going on because people assume Trump will back down and he probably won't, and people assume Pelosi will back down and maybe she won't. And in some ways, like once you get beyond the shutdown, the thing to watch for is how unified the Democrats stay, because this is a big deal, and obviously if you're covered by it, it's a very big deal if you're hit by it directly. It's going to become potentially a constitutional issue if they decide to try to impeach the president, which I think that they're going to try to do. And in Nancy Pelosi, if she's going to go that route, and if she's going to be very aggressive on oversight, very aggressive on subpoena power, she needs the full backing of the Democratic caucus. She needs to be able to read how much leverage and power and support and how durable is it if she's going to have that showdown, because I think that's what's going to define this year, not a government shutdown.